Okay. So I'm going to use a timer. Let me just set that for 40 minutes. Yeah, we have 40 minutes, right? I don't want to keep people away from lunch. All right, just give me a minute and we should be underway. There we go. And of course, I have my cheat sheet, so I have a lot of questions that I noted down. I'll just bring that up as well. Won't take much time, but thank you very much for giving the opportunity to moderate this session. I am playing your proxy role, so I'm going to be grilling these gentlemen here who have showed up and doing their roast on the role that experience design has to play in each of the area. So, all right, and we will take questions. We have about 10 minutes budgeted, so we'll keep the answers short and we'll keep the discussion more towards the question towards the end. So let me quickly introduce and then we'll get started. All right, we upset the order, so I'll have to go down. Piyush is a director of engineering with Global Logic. He's leading the e-commerce and mobility verticals at Noida. He also leads the design group at Global Logic. He's an IIT grad and has been with Global Logic since it was 50 people. So I think it's a really long time. And he's been working with a lot of e-commerce and media players in US, UK markets, defining and building their next generation products. He tells that he has zero interest in software. Oh, actually, no, you had zero interest in software when you were at IIT. Pretty much he wanted to be the general secretary of the students' body there. So we'll see if he still has interest in software. We assume he has now. We also have Neeraj. Neeraj has been graceful to fly in from Hyderabad. Neeraj is a technology practices leader with the Optum Global Solutions at United Health Group. He's responsible for mobility, cloud architecture, digital experience, and system integration practices. Wow, that's quite a long list. He also runs an innovation lab, so that adds to the list again at Hyderabad. His teams have developed mHealth, mobile health applications that have received many awards and have been appreciated at one of the premier shows, consumer electronic show, the CES, that happens in Vegas every year. As a fun fact, he mentioned that he can watch any movie any number of times with the same feeling if he watched the movie the first time. All right, I hope that doesn't include movies like Himmatwala from Sajid Khan. Anyway, let's move on. Sagar we have to complete our panel. Sagar Paul heads the client services for strategic clients at ThoughtWorks. Through his work, he's been helping customers drive ambitious missions in their businesses. A lot of years, around 22, in experience design for decision science, supply chain, in manufacturing, consulting, and information technology areas, which includes also data science companies with big data now. And he's really been a prodigy. He had a master's degree in music before he passed out of school. So we've got him in the wrong setting. We needed to have some after-event fun. We gave him a couple of things and see how well he goes. But I'm delighted to have all you gentlemen, and thank you for coming here. Before I get started, I just wanted to kind of set the context. And my context is, we've been working with big data. We've been hearing about Internet of Things. We've been hearing about new types of applications. It's going to change the whole world. And then we hear about experience design. And there's the same amount of confusion there. And for me, the confusion has been, there are too many terms thrown around. Life was easier earlier. We had GUI, and there were programmers who wrote GUI, right? Now we have terms like experience design, user interface designer, user experience designer, UX designer, visual designer, product designer, digital product designer, and I have a long list I can carry on, but in the interest of time. So one of the things I want to understand, talking and benefit from your inputs is, let's get some, inputs into real life about how do these roles and what do these roles do, and how do they really affect the Internet of Things applications? As a paradigm, Internet of Things is supposed to simplify life for us. That's the promise we've been hearing, like simplified life. There will be a lot of enablement to automate things that were repetitive. So our simplification will enable users. And a lot more than that, it is, as I was hearing, the team earlier present the overall application architecture. They ended by saying, if you thought things have changed, just wait for what is going to come. And I think that what is going to come is just shaping the behavior. So given all this context, we're very excited to know about how does user experience contribute to that. So let me quickly jump ahead, and before we get started with some questions and users' questions, just very briefly, guys, what do you do? We've already heard about that, but what have you been working with in this area with user experience designs? And if you can mention some things that might be teaser for discussion to come about your experiences. So we'll start with Piyush.
Sure. So, before I begin, just show of hands on how many wearables have been around for the past 2 years nearly. Show of hands on how many people have wearables today in this room. Pretty few, right? And that was what was suspected. In sense, and that is what defines that, Internet of Things has a long journey to go before it actually becomes something that people have and use. I heard somewhere in the earlier presentations, I think Jim mentioned it, that a technology is really adapted only when it becomes meshed up with the everyday life of people. Until then, it's a separate technology that stays separate. Right? So, as an example, there's one of the wearables that we designed for one of the firms called Kohl's, one of the e-commerce giants in the US. And I wanted to bring it up only because when we designed it and when we developed it, it was after then that we realized that this is not what is going to fly off the shelf. So this is not what people would use every day. And I would present these design challenges as use cases because these are challenges that experienced design people are facing in my company and everywhere today. And this is the problem that we need to solve. In sense that if I provide a separate wearable to a customer, it does everything that you would need to do. It would read beacons, it would be able to read alerts coming from beacons, it would be able to show you notifications, and it will enable you to be able to click and shop and move out of the store. But then the design problem that I have for people is that, why would a customer carry a separate device along with the car keys and the mobile phone that one is already carrying, right? One would not unless I give him some value. Let's say I design it as a very fancy bracelet or a very fancy smartwatch that does away with his need of carrying a watch or wearing a bracelet. So, before something becomes the third or the fourth device that somebody is using, it will have to be value additive. If it is not, let us merge it with the devices that are already there in the system. Another use case that we are working with a company called Castle Systems, which is working into hands-free access. You would have heard it far too often already. Do away with the need of all access cards. No access cards, everybody would walk in. If a door is supposed to be open, it would open just by the virtue of having an app of that company on your phone, which opens up the door. It recognizes all the readers are BLE readers. It recognizes you and opens up a door, right? The challenge is the challenge is not being able to technologically be able to do this, to be able to open the door or to be able to read and authenticate somebody and be able to do it. The kind of design challenges that we're facing today is that, let's say I configure this device to open the door at 10 meters distance, right? You will be able to seamlessly run through a garage because, when you are driving into a garage, you need the door to be open at least 10 or 20 meters when you are away from it. But then, the same thing, if it happens in an office setup, if the door opens at 10 or 20 meters of distance in an office setup, what would actually happen is, once you walk in, all doors open, right? Which is not what you want to happen. So, the design will have to be modulated or tuned to the fact that, office doors should open when you are 1 meter within the range, and garage doors should open when you're 20 meters within the range. And it should be a different experience when, let's say, you have a garage with an incline or a garage on the straight road. So this is the level of design challenges that experienced designers today are facing today.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Piyush. I think we're stuck for time, but we'll like to hear more of that as we get into the questions. So, Neeraj, quickly, from your perspective, being in the healthcare, what is your organization doing in this space, and how does user experience play a role there?
Sure. So United Health Group is into two parts. One is the insurance as well as the healthcare services part of it. And the IoT has a big role to play specifically in the services part of it. And just to set some context before I start throwing some jargons around healthcare, there are three layers which are patient-related devices in which IoT is really helpful. One of them, the first one is self-care or the wellness management part of it. The second one is the care management and the remote monitoring. The third one is the clinical part. Now, there are many more other areas where you can get into the IoT, where queue management in hospitals can happen, or asset tracking, asset utilization, and all of that can happen with that. But here I would rather like to stick to one of the use case, which is in the self-care management system. Now, we have an application called Health4Me, which is a mobile application, which is for the members. And I'm saying this members because we don't call them always the patients. Members are also who are there in the wellness program. So it's a member application, more than 1 million downloads already with us. Now, what has happened is people started using the Fitbit device and the other devices with them. And then these devices, each of them would help, give you some of the information around it. But then you would have to track separately either on the web or the mobile applications. Now, the use case that I'm doing is not, rather, too much of overload onto the end user, but try to simplify and make the IoT into the system that the person is using or the member is using. So what we did, we came up with a platform, which we call as a personal health devices platform. Now, we looked at all the devices, which basically were the Continuum Alliance. Continuum Alliance is for the standardization of personal devices, and say, what are those devices that we can onboard on this particular platform? And then making sure, because we have the healthcare, HIPAA regulations are most important, and the interface of standardization, which is HLC, we need to use this. So we used all of this platform to gather all the data through a particular device. So a person would stand on a weigh scale or do a blood pressure monitor, or the activity monitoring, sleep monitoring. All of this data would actually get to the mobile application, from where the data would be sent out to the various servers of either Fitbit or white things, gets back to you into the trackers that you have with you. And we then manage that over a period of time. Now here you are able to manage what is your, not only the actual levels, but what is your target level as well. And then we add in over here a dimension of socialization. So bring in social and link up people with various communities. If you're trying to do obesity management or you're diabetic, we put that context into it. So IoT becomes a part of your life. You don't even know, it gets embedded into your system. I'd just like to add one more terminology to your
in 30 seconds.
Whole list, which is known as human-centered design.
Yeah.
So human-centered design, we at United Health Group, we run a human-centered design studio. And this is a very new concept that's getting into the system. I run the digital experience practice, and we are bringing in the HCD concepts, which essentially is about ethnography, empathy maps, and trying to look at a person in their scenario in situ, what I call in situation, where the person is actually operating, and then look at the design of the applications.
It's very exciting. Thanks, Neeraj. Sagar.
Hi. I'll bring up 5 examples, and I choose 5 examples carefully over the last 5 years that we've worked with different kinds of customers. And you can, get a sense of experience design from at the bottommost layer, if you look at technology and aesthetics, design-centric, right, aesthetics, to the highest level, which is aspirational and inspirational, and how things could potentially change. So the first example is about one of our customers who make barbecue grills in the US. And this happened some time ago, and they needed to connect the barbecue grills to the internet, and of course the recipes, and so the heating, how much the charring would happen, all of that. It's been a while. They're still in business, but it's not connected to the internet any longer. Second one, this is in Germany, coffee machine, personalized coffee. So you put your fingerprint on a biometric sensor, and it just brews the coffee exactly the way you would need it. And if it isn't quite right, there is the mobile phone, and you would kind of say that it could have been a little more sugary, it could have been a little more creamy, or it could have been a little stronger. So the next time it learns and brews it better, right? That was the second one. The third one is in the UK, and it is for cows in large farms. So we attached 3D accelerometers on cows, and we could make out which cow was in heat and which cow was ill and which cow was perfectly fit and running around, and how much milk would be the total productive output of that farm. It was very important for the farm, which has over 1,000 cows, to identify which cow would give what milk, how much milk, and needed tending or needed fertilization for that matter. The fifth one is the fourth one is about connecting trucks and large earth-moving equipment to basically tell the service management people as to when to service and how to service in a preventive way, so you don't end up with a breakdown. And breakdown means a lot of opportunity lost, right? The last one is about the Atlanta airport, where you're basically making sense of humans in mobile conditions, or mobile humans, mobility in humans. And I'm talking about making sense because that's where it stops, and you're just trying to make sense. So these are the 5 examples that I thought I'll give out, and leave holes like a periodic table in your heads so you can fill it up, because now you know the electrons and protons and how it's going to fit in. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Sagar. So let's jump in. Let's get in a few questions that might elicit some thought process that will help everybody, and then we'll launch into the questions from the people. I was not going to ask this as a beginner question, but since you mentioned about the cows, and I was like, holy cow. But so that brings us to a very important question. Like I was, a friend of mine just recommended that please talk to these guys, young guys, startup guys, give them some wisdom. He thought I had some, but so he wanted me to talk to them, and they had this really crazy idea which uses the Internet of Things sensors to certain things. It's their idea, I can't disclose what it is. But at the end of it, I was like, is this real? Do you want to build this? And then, I was on the verge of telling them, no, this is like, too futuristic, don't do this. And then, I stopped myself. Because, what is real is what could be real tomorrow, right? The world can change. So as user experience design, how do you keep this real? When the ideas come to you about applications that you have to develop the human interfaces for, you have to develop the experience for, do you really go out there and say, wow, this is so futuristic that we don't even know how it's going to affect the people? So what's the challenge there, and how do you keep that real?
Can I take it?
Yeah, please.
All right. So I go back to 2 simple examples, right? So if you look at people wearing sneakers, right? The soles on your soles of your shoes, they're made out of space material. NASA used them, and NASA still uses that. But that reduced the cost of space programs. Ditto with video games and video gaming. If there hadn't been video games, the cost of chips wouldn't have come down dramatically. So there is a significant importance of trivialization in technology development. And that brings me to the point that you need to bake in emergence in your design, which means you need to keep things open-ended. And of course, my job as leading client services, I need to set the expectations with my customers, saying that, hey, you got to be okay with things not moving in the direction that you would really have wanted it. So it's not deterministic, it's open. But at the same time, when you look at venture capitalists and people with finances in the door, they need specific spreadsheets, which are very deterministic. So you have a base case model, and then you know when to pull the plug. I mean, you should know when to pull the plug. But it's an important point that emergence needs to be built into design.
That's very important perspective. Keep the emergence in mind as you're designing. Like to add anything?
Yeah. So building onto the HCD concept, the human-centered design concepts is essentially what in situ, right? When we start first looking at a consumer, we start looking at what do you want? Do you want a mobile application? Yes. And without saying it also goes into the web. You want to make sure that the interface that you build on the mobile, one is actually very, very conversant to the platform that you're using. You don't want to have an iOS or iPhone, experience on an Android phone. You want to make sure the very platform-specific experience is what you're building. The number two thing is you want to make sure you're going to use multiple media of access. So you want to make sure that whether you're using a laptop, whether you're using a desktop, whether you're using a phone or a tablet, the uniformity of the experience is going to remain the same. And then we get back to this in situation is where you really look at the user, where the person is using it. I'll give you an example. How many of you known of Kinect or Kinect, as you say, about the sensor gaming with Xbox that comes in with? We use it in healthcare. In healthcare, we use it for what is known as traumatic brain injury. For traumatic brain injury, you want to have a person recover slowly, stage by stage, and get back to normalcy, or into the physiotherapy. What we do is we basically take a person's skeleton, scan the skeleton, and there are recommended exercises that you need to do for a type of physiotherapy or traumatic brain injury. And then take that particular information and send it to a particular physiotherapist doctor or a particular surgeon who is doing the surgery, and you really want the person to flip the pages to know the the records of the patient as he's undergoing the surgical steps. So you really need to look at what the end user is, where the person is there, and what is expected of that particular response back. That's essentially where we'll start looking at the interface design.
It's very interesting perspective. So emergence, progression, and then keeping your user in mind, how it's going to behave. Piyush, like to add something?
Yeah, right. So keeping the user in mind is one vital cog in this piece, because sitting in a room, you would not be able to imagine all kinds of scenarios or all kinds of execution methods or mechanisms in which something would actually play. We use user interviews as a pretty important step in trying to identify what we would build. We actually ask customers that we would like to interview quite a few users, and then try and get the need. For example, when I read about when iPad was first built, the makers of the iPad actually went to school children, lived with them, stayed with them for 6 months, tried to study what they would do, and then came up with an interface or interaction that is now pretty common in the whole world.
Okay.
So the second part is that many times in technology you would not be able to perceive whether there is a need.
Okay.
You will actually need to try and perceive whether there is an option of a need to be created. So the question that we ask nowadays is not whether there is a need and thus we'll source it. The question that we ask today is it possible that a need gets created, and then try to serve it? Because or else, there's no way in which you'll be ahead of the game.
Absolutely. Three important, very good perspectives, guys. So while we are at it, so emerging technologies, talking to the users, seeing, and then also putting our brains together as technologies to see what possible use cases can they use, how can they use it. But when it gets time to make it real, what are your top 3 technologies? We have a wide audience, and somebody as naive as me would ask the question, all right, I'm pretty excited, I need to implement. Are there new kind of frameworks, technologies that you would say that, these are more used in designing IoT applications that our audience can benefit from knowing? Any numbers, top 2, 3, 4, 5 that come to your mind that can add to the skill set of people?
Yeah, so I think, the topmost that comes to my mind is something should be extremely non-invasive.
Okay.
Right? Because 10 years from today, there was only one direction in which technology could go, and that was up. So, you bring a new toy in, it will be lapped up in the market. Today, there are a growing number of users who are putting their mobile phones face down, or, trying to build up systems by which they would not be disturbed in particular periods. People have started to realize that mobile phones have already started interfering their social life so much that they want to stay away from it a bit, right? So an IoT technology will not be, and this is the wrong time for a great new technology to come in, because it will not be that easily socially accepted as things were like 5 years ago. So the most important thing that comes to my mind is it should be extremely non-invasive. It should just mesh up with the background, in the background, and be there.
But there are any technologies like frameworks that, I'm a web guy, so knowing that, web for building web thin client applications, we are moving on to the Node.js and, the Angular backbone, all the new frameworks which are coming. So in the IoT world, for building applications, are there like new technologies, new frameworks that the audience can benefit from knowing what all you have been using?
So Angular, JavaScript, and Backbone.js, I mean, these are the front-end technologies that we use most often. But the other technology is most reliable that we also, that's for the front-end that we are using. But when it happens to the processing of the data that comes in from the sensors and the devices, I think the integration bus layer, where you have the events and the rule engine that's working, that's also very, very critical and important. And the last layer, where I would call it as the consolidation layer, where you would consolidate the data, all of that to give a unified view, and from where you could value add either to mobile, to social, to anywhere else. I think these are the 3 layers that I would look at.
Okay. Sagar, do you have anything to add to that?
I look at it a little differently. I'm really not a technology guy like you. I divorced technology a long time back. But I look at the IoT as, you would have heard of SMAC, right? Social, mobile, analytics, and cloud. And just before it could have become scam, IoT brought everything together. So actually, if you look at the IoT stack, SMAC, yeah, I mean, just hope that damn thing works. My personal belief is, and when I work with a lot of young people, not so young, I feel that this is the first time when you really, really need T-shaped professionals in this industry. You could and should be an expert in one area, but your ability to work with an analytics person, a decision sciences person, a person who understands Cloudera extremely well, and work in a team and produce a release every 2 to 3 weeks is just so important, because your business model will keep changing. And also, not to forget the testers, because they are the ones who are calibrating your devices and recalibrating it so that 10-meter problem doesn't happen. So you are, the cows and the bulls are wearing the same device, but they need to be measured differently. And you really need to be able to understand that. So this is the time when all these sort of deep skills are coming together, and we need people's ability to work with each other very, very strongly.
That's a wonderful perspective. I'll just move on, Piyush. We'll have to take questions as well. I'm sure that somebody will ask something that will benefit from your thought, and we can interact over lunch as well. So one of the things that kind of segues into that, Sagar, is that things that you're saying that it's changing and it's a mindset change in the way we work. So can we formalize that a little bit and speak about your experience? How is it different from how we were designing products and applications earlier? Your regular, and now with the Internet of Things and the Internet of Everything and Internet of the Universe, I don't know, it's going to grow. So how does that whole thing change? What are the distinct elements of change in designing a product and applications earlier and now with Internet of Things?
If I can take that. So I know when we started, I came into IT in 99. So when we started building the front ends, the first thing that a UX designer would do is do a role definition. You would define a particular role. You will say what is the system to be interacted, and then come up with a screen. And after building the screen, take the screen to a usability lab, and then put all 3 cameras there, and notice whether the person is happy doing it or confused or doing all of that. So all of that was reactive. It is after you build a UX or a user experience, you're basically testing whether this works or not. A lot of investment is already done. So what we do right now is human-centered design, is we create personas before we actually get down to development. We create scenarios, and then we write down the use cases. Now when you start doing scenarios, basically you want to make sure that you have a range of scenarios already built in. What is the best case scenario where every action is successful? What is the worst case scenario where every action is a failure? And what is the average case scenario that you would even have an average experience? So you would write down the scenarios, you know the persona, you know the use case, then you sit down and start doing your UX. Now, this is a little bit time consuming, but it really helps. And to give you an example, there is something called UX 2014 Enroll. That was a program done for 2 years by the United States government to figure it out what is the user experience, a standard user experience that is required on a healthcare exchange. And after that, they realized that 3 columns and 2 rows of giving the plans to choose from is sufficient. If you do less than that, it is not optimal. If you do more than this, the user is not going to stick to that. So they have come up with a standard. So STD is being used to define some of the UX standards now.
Piyush, anything you'd like to add?
Right. So one thing, and I would like to mention 2 things here. One of them is that one change that we see from what we used to earlier was there's a lot of on-the-run processing. So I think even technologically, the front ends would stay the same. It would be AngularJS, Node.js, or whatever comes in at the speed at which it is coming in. A couple of technologies every year or so. So the front end would probably remain the same. Real-time processing, as we also talked about much further before in this call, was that real-time processing is something that will become extremely significant because we need to process a lot of data on the go and take flash decisions based on that. So systems would need to be able to be designed based on that. The other thing that is pretty important is that you can very easily do too much. As in, you can easily have too many notifications. You can easily have too much invasion, right? So, you'll have to see where we limit it not to being too much, and where we provide the information that is not stupid, as in that is sufficient for the user and does not bother on getting to the stupid.
Thanks. Sagar?
So we look at problem statements in 2 ways. One is the Sherlock Holmes approach and the other is the Columbus approach. Sherlock Holmes approach, you've got a problem, you try and solve that problem with limited means that you have. The Columbus approach is you wanted to head towards India, you landed towards America, and that's a pretty decent place. So back to the original point about emergence, right? Now, the hope is that when we are designing systems, my career started with small data, really small data, not big data. But I was in the business of decision sciences. I was in the business of operations research and so on. So I stood out there waiting for trucks to go by, loaded with steel at 1500, 1600 degrees Celsius with a stopwatch, which accurately made notes of time and then went back and put it in that Lotus 123 unpixelated, highly pixelated spreadsheets. So, and then you went back once again 3 days later just because the regression line wouldn't fit in. The whole point that I wanted to bring up is the fact that many times decisions are taken with a 2x2 matrix, and that's pretty much it. And sometimes we just wait for this fire hose of Twitter feed and whatever have you, and just get inundated with it, not knowing what to do. So CEP and all of that is fine, and there are fantastic use cases for all of that. But most of the decisions, 99% of the decisions that we handle, even on the IoT basis, are really small, droplets of information coming in from compressors which have temperature sensors and vibration sensors, and it tells you when really it's going to break down. So you got to shoot that service person a 200-mile journey to go fix it before it breaks down. So yeah, that's all fine, but I think you got to go back to the basics of what problem are you trying to solve over here, and so that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Sagar. I think we're running out of time, and like I said, we'll like to keep 10 minutes for the audience to ask their questions. I know you're eager, we'll get to you. You'll be the first one to ask the question. Sorry about that. So before I, get to the audience, just one very important last thing. I just wanted to throw in the mix and just very quickly, get one of you to talk about it. Is that we've been hearing a lot, about security, privacy. Everybody, when they're designing those systems, security, privacy, that's the primary concern. And when you're designing from a user experience perspective, does that really matter that you have to design for security and privacy? Or does it's not a concern, it's more like a back-end data-driven concern that you have to encrypt, hide it?
I want to take that and
Sure.
I'll be very quick on that one.
Yeah.
So first things first, to me, the IoT world is manifested in apps, which is really the tip of the iceberg in the IoT world, which means a lot of M2M interactions are taking place below the water. That's number one, which means the experience design of the human and the privacy and the security concerns are limited to that, needs to be understood. But having said that, while we post our pictures on Facebook, and it's so easy to guess our passwords now, just by looking at people's profiles and their friends that they have, but we're still concerned about privacy. I think a significant part of security really needs to be about how my devices, which are connected to each other right now, can have a domino effect once some security is compromised. And so how do I put in hardware security certificates into the devices itself, and how do those security protocols work? And I think that is key in my consideration. The rest, most of these other things have been solved, in my opinion.
Okay, good. We'll start with the questions.
So my question is for Sagar. And see, I had spent, because I'm glad that you mentioned about cows, okay? And I had spent a long time working with Fonterra, which is a Auckland-based company, and with dairy farmers, Oklahoma, okay? So the cows that give milk, and New Zealand cows, are very productive, okay? Unlike Indian cows, okay? So, and there's a period, and all the cows are tagged. Sometimes they have RFID devices embedded in this. But in 2008 and 9, there was recession in the industry. And the cows don't know that there is recession, okay? So I don't know, maybe in the Internet of Things, one day we'll have a mechanism to have the cows milk less in 1 year and have milk put more when the recession is gone.
So you could have milk 1 year and beef the other year.
No, because all these companies, including dairy farmers who is in Oklahoma, they not only produce milk, they produce milk ingredients, which is cheese and all that. Plus, they make medicines, which is in the osteoporosis medicine, is primarily made from milk. Then there is another medicine which is made for asthma patients, which is also milk-based. So maybe someday we'll have these intelligent devices implanted so the cows know there's a recession in the industry and they'll produce less milk, okay? So that is one. Second thing is a big problem that is faced in milk collection. All cooperatives, if you're a member of the cooperative, milk has to be collected by the company from your farm, okay? And they put the milk in a milk tanker. So if somebody gives bad milk, the whole tanker is spoiled, whole tanker is lost. And then even the quality of milks varies, the lacto content, and they have lactometer. So there also devices need to be put so that you can really penalize the farmer who has given bad milk, or the farmer whose milk quality is inferior to others, but the whole tanker gets inferior quality. Yep. So these are my two questions.
Can I answer the thing?
Yeah, sure.
I come from Punjab, and right next door house is the Nestle dairy. And if I go another 2 miles, we have the Verka dairy. I think some of those questions are pretty well answered there without the IoT stuff. I mean, without getting to the cows, if you can get the farmers to cooperate, we're doing it. And you see, if Nestle put in the protocols, and the Punjab Milk Cooperative as well as the Gujarat Milk Cooperatives are following it, it's a wonderful job. Now, one of the ways that you can reduce milk production is just put them inside the sheds and raise the temperature up and down, and that's also being looked at. mean, you got to segregate which cows are at what stage of lactation, what so those are things that are being looked at today. And I don't know about the US market, but in India, yes, that's a big concern and it's being looked at. I mean, that's all.
And people are already working on solutions where you will know which farm the wheat was produced, where from this bread that you're eating is made. So probably, and these apps are available to pretty few now. They are still under R&D. But I think in the next 10 years, each piece of bread that you're eating, you'd know which farm the wheat was done.
But there's no solution to
No, interestingly, there might be solutions, and while we talk over lunch, we can create one and ideate over one. I did see that when the team was presenting their architecture, there was a middle layer, the brains behind it, predictability. The more data you can collect, enrich it with other sources of data, and you can predict that things are going to change, then you can use mechanisms that Maninder was sharing, like raise temperature, do something, convert to a beef dairy instead of a milk product dairy. There are many things that can happen. So let's take another question. Yes?
Yeah, hi. So in terms of the design processes that we talked about, human-centered design, I think the next step of evolution for IoT-based design is service design, because the service design concept will take in the sensors, the data, even employee interactions, and how everything ties together as a service. So that, I think, is a very important part in IoT-based experience design.
And your question is?
So are we looking towards that? Are companies moving towards
We
service
just wanted
design?
to validate if that is the way to go.
Yeah.
Anybody wants to address that?
So, there's a lot happening in sense that let's consider e-commerce, as in people had different devices, and each of these devices enabled e-commerce. So you could shop on your phone and on your tablet and your computer. Now we are talking omni-channel, so that you could shop on your computer, you could surf on the computer, have the same notification on your phone, be alerted of the product on your phone, and it would have a store locator that would enable you to be able to pick it up in the store. So we are talking omni-channel already, right? And I think that is the genesis of where service design begins, because it will give you a framework or an ecosystem of all the devices that you have, an ecosystem of the complete workflow that you could use. So we are not talking one device to one design now. We are talking, a service design where it is assumed that you'll have Bluetooth, you'll have a phone, you'll have a laptop, and all these devices need to talk to each other, and you are being you're not being notified by all these channels separately. So service design certainly is looks like creating an ecosystem in which the world will operate, and that is where design would move to.
Wonderful. Any questions?
Yeah.
I had a quick
At the
comment
back.
on that, just
Sure.
a quick comment. And I think the answer to your question was absolutely. But you know how archaic we are? I wear a Fitbit device, and this phone pretty much has, this is a Windows phone, by the way, Lumia, and it's got only 3 sensors on it. That's it. And this has only one sensor, I guess, which is an accelerometer. And this has been in the market for about, 3 years? And you think service design works perfectly fine, but every time I travel globally, this thing is out of sync with my phone, is out of sync with my iPad, is out of sync with my laptop. And why should that happen? So we are like miles away from proper good service design.
Because the service design did not happen on this.
We
I
had
guess it
another
happened not well
question.
enough.
Yeah, okay. My question is to you, Piyush. Yeah, you touched upon the emergence thing, like how accurate we can be. To me, IoT sounds a bit scary, because with everything becomes an IP address, right from human beings to things. Like, for example, I will take the case of medicine. Like, if an aged family member is not able to, is forgetting the medicine one day or probably one pill, how efficient or how good it would be, like if the call is not being received by the family member to inform, it goes straight away to the hospital and the ambulance keeps running. And come on, it's not justified because it's just a miss of a pill. And another thing is, like, if I have to order a pizza or something, I know my whole medical record is being shared from the pizza center, and they would say, sir, ma'am, you have a high blood pressure, ma'am, you cannot have this. And there was a very good old example which was being shared. So what is your take on it? I mean, can we become 100% accurate, which I don't think so in terms of design considerations, but I mean, I am pretty scared with this IoT stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you're right, and my feeling is that we'll probably get there, but not in the next 2 years, right? It'll probably take 5 years or so for this to be in a state where we are 95, 97% accurate. For example, the devices that you create or the solution that you create needs to know whether you have missed a pill or is a sensor where your grandma's blood pressure had dropped way below when she's sleeping, and an ambulance needs to be alerted. Will also need to be exact enough. Because, for example, on laptops that you have, there's a big security mechanism that you have, right? But when you talk of a connected fridge, anybody could break into the security of the fridge and get into your home, right? So there certainly are challenges. It's not that these challenges are not identified already. They are. But I think, like any nascent technology, it would take like 5 years to settle down before it starts actually producing real good stuff.
And let's not forget that one of the promises is shaping your behavior. So we'll have to learn to adapt to these things being around us.
So ma'am, your
30
fears are
seconds.
absolutely true, and it is here and now. So if you are spending 50 lakhs on a car, the chances are that your car is already connected. So all cars, Mercedes, BMW, which cost over that, they are already on connected platforms. Can you imagine that you start your car and it says, and it already has an auto downloader and auto update mechanism. And what happens when you auto update from the new to the next generation Yosemite, and that damn thing hangs? And it says, ma'am,
Can't
your
drive.
brakes wouldn't work. Do you have another device?
Wonderful.
So, time is
we
now.
just have time for one more question. If you promise 30 seconds for the question and 30 seconds for the answer. 30 seconds. sir.
Hi, my name is Abhishek, and this question is door. As soon as I reach near my door, so I can hack this solution for an entire building or for an entire city, and I can actually cause a big threat to all the people who are using this solution. So my question is actually, is security going to be a determining factor for reputation of an organization who is building an IoT solution? Because hacking a bank system or hacking onto a Facebook is not as dangerous as compared to hacking an IoT solution.
Yeah, so have to follow the HIPAA guidelines. Any PII, any PHI, that is personally identifiable information or personal health information, has to be encrypted, either over the wire or the storage or the client or the device. And there are rules around it, how you can handle, mask the data, and all of that is there. The IoT is only going to open up your possibilities for you. At some point in time, the human intelligence will have to come in and say how much I'm going to use it for it. If you're just going to use, for example, a thumbprint to be enough, or an iris scan to be done, or you want to go beyond and say, can I also look at your pulse that happens and all of that? It's only how much that you can do. At one point in time, we said use a simple password. Now you say don't use a simple password. A number of, you are given instructions about what your password is going to be. So what we do with IoT is going to be our intelligence as what we and use that we want to do it. But IoT certainly opens up the challenges of security. Nobody can say I have an answer for that. You will have to figure it out or navigate your way through it.
Wonderful. With that note, we do have the lunch, and you can always interact with the people with more questions. But before we finish, I had there are prizes, but you only get the prize, the best panelist gets the prize. And we will determine by audience vote. So let's go one round and say, Piyush, show your love for Piyush. No, not like this. Yeah. What about Sagar? Awesome. So my decision is that they're all equal. You showed enough love. So thank you, everyone. Everybody gets one token of appreciation from NASSCOM and Global Logic. Thank you, guys. Thank you for participating and sharing your valuable views.
One parting thought. With IoT, it's certainly possible that we stay leaders, but we'll have to try harder than we have tried with internet.